Hi, I'm Bob Bush at the Hakama Corporate Governance Summit at the fabulous Armani Hotel. I have the pleasure of meeting Wardah and she's not a speaker today, but I think she has one of the most interesting things to talk about as she was sitting in the audience. She's written a thesis on corporate governance in Saudi, the UAE, as well as Kuwait. And her particular spin is looking at mergers and acquisitions between traditional banks, traditional companies, and Islamic banks and companies, and some of the unique challenges surrounding Islamic corporate governance. So thank you for joining us. To step back, tell us a little bit about your thesis, why you decided to work on it, and what were some of the key takeaways that came out of it?
Actually, in 2011, I started my PhD. One of my previous assistant professors, he advised me to do research on corporate governance, and he told me go and read about it. By that time, I didn't know anything about corporate governance in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region. I read about the corporate governance, but I didn't find too many sources talking about corporate governance in the Gulf region. But when I talked to my supervisor, he said, go ahead, because this is a unique area of research, and you're going to find strong findings at the end of the research. I applied the research on 3 Gulf countries because I want to see what are the differences between the Sharia application in the 3 countries, how they practice Sharia, why they are different from each other. I found challenges mainly about the Sharia board and board of directors. There are conflicts between them in making decision, because the Sharia board seems to be like powerful more than the board of directors in the Islamic companies. Also, I found challenges in terms of zakat and tax. The Islamic companies, if they do mergers or an acquisition with other non-Islamic companies, they pay dual tax, like the Islamic zakat and the conventional tax. So there are many also, but
and that puts a double burden on an Islamic institution.
Yes.
So their tax rate is actually higher because they're paying 2 forms of tax.
Yes, it's higher.
It's
and
tough to
also
be
the Sharia board costs the Islamic companies more than the non-Islamic companies.
Yeah, sure.
Because
the boards are more
they
expensive.
pay them a lot.
Yeah.
They provide their fatawas, you have to pay them to get the fatawa.
So then how would an Islamic institution financially compete when it's got double taxes and a much more expensive board? How does it compete against traditional companies or traditional banks when its cost structure seems to be higher?
Actually, they have to work on their structure. They have to find a model called Islamic corporate governance. Actually, I formed a model for the Islamic corporate governance consistent of 3 theories: the stakeholders, agency, and stewardship.
Right.
How these 3 theories can help the Islamic companies to compete with the conventional, where the gaps in between the conventional and the Islamic companies, what are the challenges, how to sort these problems out in terms of Islamic companies.
And so that now that you've done this canvassing of 3 countries, at the end of the day in your thesis, did you score them with high, medium, low?
Yes.
You did, huh?
Yes, I did.
So
I
what
did
was
classify the results or the findings.
Yeah.
I found that the UAE is the most liberal country.
Most liberal or the best corporate governance?
Liberal, because they don't apply the Sharia principles.
Yeah, as strictly as...
Yes, strictly as Saudi Arabia, for example.
Okay, makes sense.
Saudi Arabia is the highest, and then Kuwait, and then UAE. But UAE is the best in applying corporate governance practices.
So the Saudis have a higher standard, but
Yes.
sometimes don't meet their standard.
Yes.
Whereas the UAE has a more liberal standard, but it sticks to that standard.
Yes.
That's a very interesting takeaway. Last question.
Yeah.
Did you name any names of particular banks or institutions?
No.
So you
For
had the
confidential,
information,
yes.
but then you anonymized it
Yes.
so that no one gets into trouble.
No.
So maybe behind the scenes, that's something that when you're trying to put this in practice, you can go and actually show some of the
Show the
companies that you
yes.
reviewed
Inshallah.
where
I
they
hope-
can improve.
I hope I get the chance to practice what I found in my thesis.
Oh,
because-
so you don't want to be in the Islamic ivory tower. You're going to come down from your PhD
Yes.
and get to fixing things.
Of
yeah?
course,
That's
yes.
fabulous.
Thank
Well, I'm
you so
looking
much.
forward to the next stage of you taking that research and putting it into practice.
Inshallah.
Thank you for
Thank you
for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My
Thanks.
pleasure. Bye-bye.